Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me. Now, if you haven't been around this month, I just want to kind of recap where we've been. All month long, we have been talking about the practice of realignment. What the heck is that? For those of you who may not know, it is the practice of literally realigning yourself when life throws you a curveball. And man, has 2020 thrown a lot of us a lot of curveballs, because not only are we dealing with a global pandemic, but we're also dealing with the everyday curveballs that would be coming at us anyway. So it's kind of stacking up, and we are juggling a lot right now. Routines look very different. Life looks very different. And so I thought it would be helpful this month to lean into the practice of realignment, which is something I lean very heavily into in my courses and with my private clients. Because no matter how successful you are, no matter how dedicated you are to your health journey, you are going to get misaligned time and time again. And the trick is to quickly pivot yourself back to the things that really help you to feel grounded and capable when you do find yourself getting misaligned. So in part one, which was in the first week of the month, episode 209, we talked about the importance of gaining clarity about what misalignment actually looks and feels like for you, and the importance of chemical rebalancing. And what that means is you are committed to doing the things that help you to stabilize your chemistry, so you aren't trying to operate from a reactive place. So the 5 things that I strongly feel help people to rebalance chemistry are: number 1, hydration, getting enough sleep, enough recovery, moving your body often and much, eating a diet of real food, and definitely managing your mindset. And if you could use a little bit of help with diving deeper into any or all of those topics, I strongly recommend that you register for the 5-part video series on my website. It's completely free. And all you need to do is go to graceandgrit.com/5 to thrive. And you'll just enter your name and email, and we will shoot those videos over to you. So once again, that is graceandgrit.com/5 to thrive. And then in part 2 of this series, we really leaned heavily into mending your relationship, because usually when we get misaligned with our health journey, it's because we aren't doing things like making time. We aren't listening to our body. We aren't being honest with ourselves. We aren't extending compassion to ourselves. And to me, those are all very relation-oriented things. And I have long said, you will hear me say this many times if you continue to listen to this podcast, that improving health is really an exercise in improving the relationship that you have with yourself. So that was episode 210. And today I'm actually doing a bonus podcast. So normally I only do 2 podcasts a month, but this month I am doing a 3rd one, because I want to wrap up this conversation of the practice of realignment by talking about 3 things that will make realignment not just possible for you, but probable. And those 3 things are: number 1, coming up with good strategy. Right? Really getting clear about the types of action you are committed to taking. And I'll go deeper into that in just a second. The second thing is, of course, your mindset. right? How you think, how you manage your thoughts, and your willingness to manage your emotions. And the third thing that will help you to make realignment not just possible, but probable is building a daily practice of recommitting. So today's episode, I'm going to do a deeper dive into all three of those things, so you are clear on what I mean by that. So I hope that sounds good to you. So let's talk first and foremost about your strategy. You know, when we get misaligned, usually several days or several weeks go by, and we don't feel terrible right away, right? Because if we've been taking care of ourselves, our body has the capacity to support us for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, even if we're not really giving it the attention it deserves. But eventually we cross a threshold. We cross into a place where we wake up one day and we feel terrible. Maybe we notice that, we've gained some weight. Maybe we notice that we're just feeling exhausted all of a sudden. And the reality is none of this happened all of a sudden. It's just that our lack of showing up for ourselves has compounded to the point that now we're really feeling the effects. And when we're in that space of feeling the effects, man, do we get desperate. We get really desperate to feel better fast. And ladies, we don't tend to make the best decisions for long-term health when we are in a space of feeling desperate. In fact, we reach for what I call the Hail Mary approaches, the extreme measures executed in short time frames that promise us really big results. And while that may temporarily help you to feel a little bit better, it honestly screws up our ability to stay aligned over the long term because we aren't really adopting new behaviors, right? We're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. So when it comes to strategy, what I believe is smart strategy is very simple and very unsexy. So there's no extreme measures here. There's no short time frames, but this is a process this is literally the very process that I work my clients through to help them get realigned and, more importantly, stay aligned. So the first step in the SMART strategy is keep it stupid simple. Make winning easy. So when you're feeling misaligned, I know it's tempting to recommit to all the things. So on Monday morning, because it's always on a Monday morning, you're going to start drinking more water. You're going to, get back to eating all the foods that work for you. You're going to put yourself to bed at a reasonable hour. You're going to meditate a little bit during the day. You're going to exercise, for at least an hour. You commit to a lot. And when you commit to a lot, you are literally setting yourself up for failure. And probably all of you listening to this podcast today can identify with that, where you wake up Monday morning, you wrote the plan on Sunday night, you have the best of intentions, and by Monday evening, you're feeling like, damn, what happened? Well, what happened is your expectation was too big. Your circle of expectation was way too big. And so we just simply need to draw smaller circles of expectation. Because you winning is really important. It's important to your brain. It's important to the way you feel. Because when you feel like you're winning, you feel like you're succeeding, you're going to keep going. But when you feel like you're failing, you're actually having conversations in your head about quitting, about maybe next Monday I'll start, right? We get into a space of a lot of negotiation and compromise. So the very first thing I want you to consider in realignment with your strategy is make winning easy. The second thing is once you decide on the thing that you are committing to, and I said, yes, the thing, not the things, but the thing. So we make winning easy by committing to something, one thing. You know what? Tonight I'm going to bed at 8:00. Great. Okay, so there's my one thing. Now that I've decided, the next step is I need to start predicting why that's not going to happen. What are all the things that are going to get in my way that I'm going to use as rationalization for not putting myself to bed at 8 o'clock? Well, my family's not going to be going to bed at that time. Maybe I'm not going to be tired, right? Maybe there's going to be a lot of housework to do. Maybe I'm just not going to feel like it. I mean, we could come up with a list of probably 20 things easily. And here's the second part of this exercise. Once I have predicted what the obstacles are going to be, I now have the opportunity to talk myself through some possible strategies. Well, if my family isn't winding down, that's okay. I can just make it very clear to them that, hey, guys, I'm going to go to bed tonight at 8 o'clock because I'm exhausted. And so if you could just maybe keep it down, I'm going to close my door, just make sure nobody comes in, right? Like that's an easy solution. So step 1, keep it stupid simple. Pick one thing you are fiercely committed to. Number 2, once you know what that thing is, predict your obstacles for why you're not going to show up for that thing, what might get in the way, and also predict strategies for working through those obstacles. The third piece is you make a plan, right? So if my plan is to be in bed tonight at 8 o'clock, I probably need to put on my schedule that I need to start winding down at around 7:30. So if I think about the things that I do before I go to bed, I wash my face, I go to the bathroom, I take some supplements. I need to do that around 7:30. So maybe I set a little alarm on my phone just to remind me that it's time to wind down. And I know some of you are thinking like, wow, what magical thinking to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. But I got to tell you, I do go to bed sometimes at 8 o'clock at night because I like to get up really early. And for me to get enough sleep, sometimes it just requires that I get in bed by 8. And I'm totally cool with that. Okay, so we have picked the thing. We've predicted obstacles and strategies. We've made the plan on our calendar for how that's actually going to happen. And here's one thing I want to mention about planning. Planning is really effective when you do it a day ahead of time. So tonight, before I go to bed, I will make my plan for the day tomorrow in terms of how I am going to spend my time. The reason I think it's so important to make a plan 24 hours in advance, and it's not really 24 hours, right? It's like 12 hours. But the day before, the reason I think that's so powerful is because it allows me to do my best thinking, right? So I am in a space of being able to use my higher brain, my prefrontal cortex, which allows me to think about my thinking. It allows me to think about how I want to best utilize my time tomorrow based on who I want to be in the world. Right? Where if I try to make the plan the morning of or kind of midway through the morning of the day where I'm committing to these things, I'm actually in reactive mode. So I'm not doing my best thinking. So planning 24 hours in advance is really powerful. So you have your plan. Step 4 is, of course, you get to follow through with your plan. And this is the hardest part, right? The practice of follow through is probably one of the biggest focuses of my work with my private clients and my students. Because we can pick the thing. We can make a list of all the obstacles and strategies. We can make the plan. None of that is super uncomfortable. But where we tend to get really uncomfortable is actually following through with the plan. Because we don't feel like it, because it's not convenient, right? We get to experience the most discomfort when it's time to actually follow through. And this is awesome because this allows us to really do some of our best thought management work. When it's time to follow through, what am I thinking that's preventing me from showing up? It's a great question to ask yourself. The other thing it allows us to do, the practice of follow through, is just allow urges, right? Allow the urge to not show up. Doesn't mean you're not going to show up. It just means you are going to have a feeling of not wanting to show up. That's totally normal. You're going to let that kind of move through your body for a couple minutes, and then you're going to follow through with your plan anyway. You have urges all the time, right? When you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off, I'm sure you have the urge to maybe say some not such nice things, but maybe your kids are in the car, right? And yet in that moment, you are feeling an urge. You're kind of allowing it to be in your body, and then you're just moving on without actually responding to it. And that's really such an important skill to be reminding ourselves of when we're trying to follow through with our plan. Urges are a totally normal human experience. You have them all the time. And yet you convince yourself with certain behaviors, especially when it comes to your self-care, that they're so powerful you can't possibly just allow it to be there. You can allow urges without responding. And it is something I highly encourage you to practice because it will change your life. So our SMART strategy, just to quickly recap, you're going to pick one thing to commit to, and you're going to make that one thing, you're going to commit to something within that is small enough that you can make winning easy. On a scale from 1 to 10, you're at like an 8 or a 9, certain that you are going to accomplish that thing today. You're going to predict the obstacles that might come up with following through with that behavior. And you are going to come up with some strategies for working through those potential obstacles. You're going to make a plan. So you're going to plan the day ahead on your calendar when you're actually going to execute that thing. And then you're going to practice following through the day of. And then you repeat it, and you repeat it, and you repeat it. And this is how we make massive change in our lives. There is so much grace and kindness in this kind of strategy. And I know some of you might be rolling your eyes, right? Because this is exactly the opposite of what diet culture has sort of conditioned us to believe about behavior change. No, you need to commit to all the things. And you need to have a huge meal plan that someone else designed for you to follow. And you need to have a really complicated exercise program. No, you don't. In fact, if you are fighting for that belief, I guarantee you are going to continue to struggle to get yourself aligned. It's also worth mentioning here that, you really need to be careful when you are picking your one thing to commit to, that you're really careful about the type of action you are committing to. And here's what I mean by that. Passive action is committing to doing something that doesn't require any discomfort, right? So it's, maybe it's making the plan. It's, getting out your tennis shoes to put them by the door the next morning. It's reading a book or listening to an inspiring podcast. I'm not saying that those things can't be powerful along the journey, but they aren't what create change. What creates change is you actually putting rubber to the road and doing something that creates change. So we call this massive action. And when I say massive action, it doesn't mean the size of the action. It just refers to action that matters. And this requires radical honesty on your part. Are the actions you are committing to super comfortable and not really creating any kind of change? Or are you truly committing to things that will create deep change in your life? So examples, listening to this podcast will not change your life. I have said this so many times. What will change your life is applying what you learn on this podcast. Buying new running shoes won't make you a better runner. Putting on the running shoes and committing to some kind of schedule where you go for, you run consistently for weeks on end, that will make you a better runner. Making a plan for how you're going to live your day tomorrow won't change your life, but following through with the plan will definitely, compounded over time, change your life. So massive action is applying what you learn. Passive action is just consuming information. And I gotta say, I really strongly feel that we are living in a time where a lot of people are just consuming information because it's easy, it's comfortable. Sure, you get inspired, but inspiration doesn't change your life. Action changes your life. So massive action is application of the knowledge that you have. And ladies, you have so much knowledge. Stop telling yourself you don't. You don't need more information. You need more application. I've said this as well for, a long time, that there's this wide gap for most women between what they know and what they actually do with any degree of consistency. And really the goal of improving our health is to narrow that gap. We want to apply more consistently the things that we know. That is the secret sauce. So another way to think about passive versus massive action, this is one of the ways I think about it, is if I'm super comfortable, like really comfortable, like I don't really feel like this is requiring any effort, I'm not having to kind of deal with any uncomfortable emotions, I can be rest assured that what I'm committing to is probably a passive action. Because massive action that actually moves your life in a direction, is not comfortable. And this brings us to this next linchpin of success with getting yourself realigned, which is your mindset. A lot of you have probably heard of the book by Carol Dweck titled Mindset. And in the book, she talks about the difference between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. I've done podcasts about this. In fact, I did a podcast on it very early on. I think it was episode 3. So you might want to check that out if you're not familiar with the book at all. But also read the book. The book is such a phenomenal read. And I'll tell you just kind of in summary, the difference between growth and fixed. A fixed mindset is really this mindset that I am who I am. This is who I have been my entire life, and therefore this is who I will always be. If I've not been athletic in the past, I won't be athletic in the future. Whatever I was born with in terms of skills and aptitudes, that is my capability. Whereas the growth mindset is I can become whoever and whatever I want as long as I'm willing to do the work. Right? I can learn anything. Where the fixed mindset is, I'm either good at it or I'm not. Another example of the growth mindset would be when you're learning a new skill or you're applying to a new behavior change, it's normal to feel frustrated, right? It's normal to have a lot of moments of frustration. And somebody with a growth mindset would just look at that as part of the learning process. So they can persevere, they can continue to do the work. Where someone with a fixed mindset will feel frustrated and use that as a reason to give up. Somebody with a growth mindset really leans into challenge. They realize that challenge is really what promotes growth in our life. Where people with a fixed mindset retreat from challenge. If it's uncomfortable, I'm not doing it. So people with a fixed mindset really kind of look at discomfort as a beacon for stopping. Where someone with a growth mindset feels discomfort and thinks, I must be onto something. Growth must be happening here. This is where I'm changing. This is where the real work is happening. So a growth mindseted person almost pursues discomfort. I've long said to my clients that one of the greatest things you could ever do is learn how to befriend discomfort. Please don't hear me say befriend suffering, befriend massive struggle. That's not what I'm saying. But if you are committed to being a fully expressed human, discomfort will be a part of that journey. So growth mindset is really this idea that your effort and your attitude is what determines everything. Where a fixed mindset is the abilities that you are born with is what determines everything. People with a growth mindset have a ton of grit. They persevere, they press on, they have a lot of resilience. Where a fixed mindset is really kind of a space of helplessness. This is something I wish I could change, but because I just don't have that skill, I can't. So my question to you, those of you who are listening today, is who are you? Are you someone who is defined by your past? So your family of origin, your social status, your age, your natural abilities? Or are you someone who's really committed to going after the future that you truly crave? Because you can't really have both, right? You can't be identified by your past and create new possibility for your future. And here's what I mean by that. Your best thinking is what got you to where you are right now in this moment of time. So if you want something bigger and kind of a new possibility for your life, you can't think the things that you've always thought. You have to start thinking new things. You have to develop new skills. You have to be willing to rumble with new thoughts and emotions. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this next month. So come back if hopefully, maybe you're a repeat listener, so hopefully you'll be back. And if this is the first time listening, I hope you will come back. If this podcast today is resonating, we'll talk more about the power of really being future focused, especially when it comes to your health journey next month. And please don't hear me say that by being future focused, it doesn't mean you're not living in the present. That's something that I think gets very sort of misunderstood. It just means that you are committed to possibility. And I don't see a lot of people committed to possibility. I see a lot of people arguing for why possibility isn't a possibility, if that makes sense. So just to kind of, wrap up this kind of linchpin of mindset, having a growth mindset is really being committed to growth over perfection. A growth mindset requires that you ditch perfection and really embrace messiness. Because ladies, change is messy. I know we would love it to be like this perfectly linear process, but it's not. It's a really messy process. We have to be willing to rumble, is what I always say to my community, which means we have to be willing to fail. And somebody with a growth mindset is going to look at failure as a learning opportunity. Failure is a very integral part of the learning process. It doesn't define who you are as a person, but somebody with a fixed mindset will take failure and use it to define who they are. Also, I think it's really important to emphasize here that somebody with a growth mindset does not equate success with reaching an outcome. Success is so much more to them. Success is about learning and developing who they are as a human being, not just about reaching a goal. So a growth mindseted person is really enjoying and deeply involved in the journey, not just hyper-focused on reaching a destination, because they understand and appreciate that where the development, where the gold is in that messy middle. It's in the journey. So health is a journey of self-discovery and personal development. It isn't about arriving anywhere. Like, sure, you might want to lose some weight. You might want to improve your blood profiles. You might want to improve your hormones. And that's all great. But those things are not definitive of health. Health is so much bigger than your blood profiles. How much do you like yourself? How strong are the relationships in your life? How much do you have a purpose? How much do you feel like you have a purpose for your life? These are all things that need to be considered to really create that space of deep health, which is the conversation I'm most interested in as a health coach. I'm not just interested in sort of these superficial conversations of weight loss, blood profiles, these kinds of things. I am interested in deep health, liking who you are, what you do, and why you do it. Okay, so let's talk about this third element of success when it comes to realignment. So this is an element that, again, will make your ability to realign yourself not just possible, but probable. And it's this: you must develop a practice of recommitting every single day to yourself and what it is you truly want for your life. The definition of recommitment is to commit again and again. And, we're living in a time where it's so easy to give up and just jump to the next thing. We can change jobs literally every week if we wanted to. We can change partners. We can change where we live, so much more easily than you could, years ago. We change diet and exercise plans constantly. And when it comes to these things, like aside from the last one, but when it comes to our partners, our jobs, where we live, I think most of us can understand this idea that, yeah, sure, I could just give up and move on to the next thing. However, there's so much reward and benefit from staying in the thing and figuring it out. And there's really two reasons people quit, right? They either quit because they truly know themselves on such a deep level that they just decide that this thing is no longer a fit for them and the life that they want. And that's a beautiful thing. But that is not why most people quit. Most people quit because they're not willing to put in the work. They're not willing to get radically honest about their part in their own dissatisfaction. So are you quitting on the thing, be it the partner, the job, the diet, the exercise program, because it really isn't working, or because you aren't working and you aren't willing to do the work? There is a very big difference. And when you live in a way where you've kind of made a habit out of quitting because you just aren't willing to lean into discomfort, you end up trying on a lot of things, but accomplishing absolutely nothing. And you kind of live on this surface level of life, which again, if that's your choice and you're satisfied with that, great. But most people I don't think are. There's this just kind of underlying integrity pain when they live surface level because they know. They know there's this, it's almost like an unnameable discomfort that they feel day to day when they live surface level. And, I, for one, do not want to live like that. And I think most of you listening do not want to live like that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have actually made it this far through this podcast today. So again, improving health is an exercise in improving the relationship that you have with yourself. And relationships require that you recommit to staying in the arena to sort it out when things are difficult and things are messy and things are wildly imperfect. And you certainly don't have to. You don't have to stay in the arena. But like I said, you'll never experience the power that deep relationships bring to your life if you're constantly moving on to the next thing. Staying in the arena to figure it out is where we develop resilience, and self-respect, self-trust, self-confidence. It is literally how we grow. When we live surface level, we never grow. And honestly, if you think about the opposite of growth, it's stagnation. And when we stagnate, it's just a slow death. I don't see a lot of people staying in the arena when it comes to improving their health because people aren't willing to get uncomfortable. They aren't willing to rumble. People want to commit to short periods of time to achieving a result like weight loss, convincing themselves that now they're healthy. Now that I got the 20 pounds off, I'm good. But it's kind of like showing up for a few months with your partner and really being all in, and then just putting on the brakes and expecting that relationship to keep rolling along as beautifully as it was when you were showing up every day. That's insanity. Relationships don't work like that. The relationship with yourself does not work like that. Health is not a finish line to cross. It isn't an outcome. It is a commitment to a long-term relationship with yourself. So how are you showing up in that relationship? The work that I do with my community is really so radically different than sort of the pathway that is offered by diet and fitness culture. So I run a robust membership site called Rumble and Rise that is exactly in dedication to the things that we're talking about here today. And the reason I developed this community is because I was hungry to be involved in a culture that was committed to effort and practice and recommitment and imperfection. And I was at a loss to find that anywhere, even for myself. And I certainly knew that my clients were at a loss for that because many of them came to me after years of chasing these Hail Mary approaches, right? These cookie cutter programs that don't do anything to help them develop self-leadership. So we're just, as a side note, we are opening that community for registration later next month in September. So if it's something that you think you might be interested in, definitely stick around, get on my email list, because we'll be giving you an opportunity to be a part of some really fun masterclasses that are totally free that you can find out more about that through. So just to recap where we've been today, 3 things that will make your ability to realign not just possible, but probable. You've got to find smart strategy. You've got to pursue smart strategy. And remember, the strategy that we covered today, 5 parts. Pick an action that is stupid simple, so you make winning easy. Predict the obstacles and the strategies for those obstacles with that specific action. Make a plan the day before about how you're going to show up the next day to execute that action. Lean into the discomfort and follow through with your plan. That's step 4, probably the hardest one. And then repeat and repeat and repeat. The second thing we talked about was how you think, right? Your mindset matters. It is the most important work you will ever do. When it comes to any level of success you're trying to create in your life. Yes, I happen to be very passionate about the health conversation, but your mindset is the most important thing, regardless of where you're trying to create success in your life. So, are you committed to developing a growth mindset? Are you nurturing a growth mindset, or are you really just playing into a fixed mindset? And then the third thing we discussed was really building a daily practice of recommitment, staying in the arena and doing yourself the favor of rumbling until you figure it out. Because my high hope is that you never give up on your health journey, right? You're in this body until the day you die. And what do you want the quality of that relationship to be? My hope is you will make it a spectacular one. So next month, we are going to lean into the monthly theme of radical responsibility and what that looks like and how to really take deep ownership of your health journey, which you could argue is kind of the topic of all my podcasts, but we're going to do a really deep dive into that next month. So I hope you will come back and join me for that. Thank you so much for being here today. If you enjoy what you've heard, I have 2 requests. Number 1, share it with the women in your life who you think could benefit from the message. Or, your sharing is the best way for this podcast to grow. So talk about it. If you are on social media, maybe make a post about it. But just give it, offer it to the women in your life that you care about who you think could benefit from it. And the second thing is if you've never left a review for the podcast, please do so, because a lot of people read reviews. It's how we can get our podcast into the ears of more listeners. And I want this podcast in as many ears as possible. So if you think that it has something valuable to offer, I would definitely appreciate it immensely if you took the time to leave a review. So thank you so much. I hope you have a magnificent week, and I will see you again very soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.